Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of one of the bedrock principles of our economy, the independence of the Federal Reserve Board. For more than a century, the Federal Reserve has served as a cornerstone of the economic system of our country, tasked with safeguarding price stability, maximizing employment, preserving the health of our country, independent from political pressure, insulated from partisanship, and rooted in data and principle. When I first came to Congress, Mr. Speaker, I was a member of what was then called the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, now Financial Services. And at that committee, as it is today under the new name, we heard from the chair of the Fed on a specific amount of time required by Congress on two subjects. According to the Humphrey Hawkins law, they would report to us on inflation, and they would report on unemployment, unemployment. And that was their part of the purview in their communication with Congress that was required on a regular basis. I heard one of the chairs of the Fed say unemployment is dangerously low. Scared me to death. How could it be? But he was reporting as to its impact on inflation. One thing that was when I was a new member. When I was Speaker, I said to our members who said frequently, why don't we have the Fed be more accountable to us? I said it has to be independent. They have their own funding. They don't have to depend on us for that because their independence is essential. Any of us who had economics in college or beyond knows that independence of the Fed is essential to the respect that our country commands in terms of our own economy throughout the world. The chairman of the Fed is the chair of the central banks, serves as a chair of the central banks globally. And it can't be a party hack. It can't be somebody who's there because the president wants to create interest rates. That's not what the president's job is, to create interest rates. It's the it's the Federal Reserve Board that does that. So it's really important. And I come to you on this day to say this because of the rumors that we hear of the flirtation with making the Fed just a handmaiden of the presidency. It would be wrong. It would be wrong to do. It would be wrong to do, and we would be viewed disrespectfully if we were ever to go down that path. Now, this comes at a time when we are observing the 15th anniversary of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. As some of us here know who've served with Barney Frank, he was then the chair of the then Financial Services Committee and a master of his agenda there. And Senator Dodd from Connecticut was on the Senate side with that. It was necessary, Mr. Speaker, because of what was happening in the financial community. The banks it was awful. It was horrible. But you all know that in September of 2008, we were told that our financial system was melting down. It was doing so because of, well, I've written about it in my book, and I won't go through the whole thing right now, but because of what was happening terribly in the financial system by the banks and financial services, financial institutions. What happened? Millions of people lost money, trillions of dollars from the wealth of the country, millions of people losing their jobs, so many losing their homes, losing their savings and the rest. So this bill was necessary. Of course, after the bill was passed, and to this day, still the banks and other financial institutions try to undermine it and weaken it. The Volcker rule of former chair of the Fed, who had a bill provision in there, was for the security of our economic system. So these notions that they're putting forth of making the Fed a party hack, it's just so very wrong. It's just so very wrong. And just say this, again, in school you probably learned of fiscal policy, and that's what the Congress of the United States does. We create the budget of the United States. And the monetary policy, fiscal here, monetary at the Fed, establishing the rates in terms of relating to inflation. So let's disabuse ourselves of notions when instead we need serious ideas about how to make our economy work for the American people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.